When warm fruit meets savory dough and molten cheese, the reaction is immediate, both physically on the plate and psychologically in the people gathered around it. On one side of the table, you have advocates who champion the combination as a joyful, brilliant fusion of flavors. On the other, skeptics, who treat it as an active, deliberate crime against cooking. The skeptics argue that anyone adding pure sugar to a savory dish carries the burden of proof to justify it. The advocates counter that delivering a perfect balance of sweet, tangy, and salty is all the proof they need. We have been running in these same circles for decades without reaching a verdict. The argument persists in a permanent loop because the actual ingredients stopped mattering years ago. This is a proxy war. A slice of Hawaiian pizza acts as a mirror, reflecting 4 distinct psychological frameworks we use to process reality, handle conflict, and decide who gets to control joy. To understand the skeptic's structural argument, look at the food science. A fresh pineapple is highly acidic and packed with moisture. When baked on raw dough, its water and acid break down the gluten network. The crust deteriorates. But the optimist treats structural sabotage as a solvable engineering issue. Draining the fruit and building a salty protein barrier, like ham or bacon, keeps the dough intact. Execute that properly, and you engineer a chemically balanced flavor profile. You get the sharp tang and sweetness of the fruit, cutting straight through the heavy, salty fat of the meat and cheese. You can fix the chemistry. You can engineer away every physical flaw in the moisture and the bake. But even with perfect execution, the argument persists, because scientific fixes cannot resolve the subjective friction of human preference. While those two factions debate the physical chemistry, the pragmatist bypasses the food completely and looks directly at the economic reality. This is a chart tracking global pizza sales. Across entirely different cultures, continents, and palates, the Hawaiian pizza remains locked into the top 5 most ordered pies on Earth. The market has already spoken. Present that reality to a skeptic, and they will invoke the McDonald's defense. McDonald's serves millions of people daily, but massive popularity does not prove that a product is actually good. Millions of dollars in daily sales tell a very clear story, but empirical data is entirely useless if your opponent refuses to accept mass appeal as a valid metric for success. The skeptic ultimately relies on a standard of culinary purity to banish the pineapple, but the philosopher points out that this standard is a historical illusion. Long before anyone worried about tropical fruit, the original foundational ingredients of Italian pizza faced their own outrage. The tomato, which is technically a berry, was viewed with deep suspicion by Europeans. Basil was once actively feared as poisonous. The authentic, wood-fired pizza napolitana, revered by purists today, is the direct result of centuries of culinary rule-breaking. A 19th-century Italian baker would be horrified by our modern iterations. Culinary traditions mutate. They adapt to new ingredients, new migrations, and changing tastes. Appealing to a fixed, imaginary set of ancient laws to shut down a modern recipe is a logical fallacy. Almost every classic dish revered today survived an initial period of public scandal. The outrage fades, the ingredients normalize, and the novelty becomes the new standard. How a person reacts to that process reveals their psychological baseline. The rejection or embrace of warm fruit on dough exposes how they view authority, how they handle novelty, and how strictly they police the borders of everyday delight. Pizza, by its very nature, was invented as a cheap, flat canvas for migration and reinvention. Enforcing strict, immovable borders on that specific dish is an absurd exercise. The solution to this specific culture war requires exactly 3 steps. Acknowledge that delight is entirely subjective, let everyone order what they want, and tip your driver. Most of our bitter cultural arguments lose their heat the moment we drop the demand for universal consensus, sit down at the same table, and simply agree to split the pie.